You just saw the full story of how my son's innocence was almost used against me. The lesson here isn't just about deception, it's about trust, protection, and knowing when to question even the people you love most. If you've ever had a gut feeling something was off, or a child asked for help in a way that didn't feel right, comment below and share your story. And remember, trust must always be earned, not assumed. The call came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind of afternoon where nothing feels urgent, no warning signs, no tension in the air, just routine. I was halfway through sorting paperwork when my phone buzzed and his name lit up the screen. My son. I smiled before I even answered. "Hey, buddy," I said, already expecting to hear something light, maybe a question about homework, maybe a complaint about a teacher, maybe nothing important at all. But the voice on the other end stopped me cold. "Dad, I need your help." It wasn't the words, it was how he said them. Quiet, tight, controlled, like he was choosing each sentence carefully, afraid of getting something wrong. My son has never been good at hiding his emotions. When he's stressed, it spills out. When he's scared, you hear it immediately. This time, it was different. "What's going on?" I asked, already standing up without realizing it. He hesitated, just a second too long. I'm not doing well in school," he said. "I tried to fix it myself, but I can't, and I need you to help me with something, urgently." My chest tightened. Parents know this feeling. The moment your child's problem becomes your problem without discussion, there's no calculation, no weighing options. You just step forward. "Okay," I said. "Slow down. Tell me what's happening." He explained that he was behind, that there were forms, that deadlines were coming fast, that he didn't fully understand everything, but the school said it had to be handled right away or there would be serious consequences. That phrase stood out. Serious consequences. It didn't sound like something a teenager would normally say. It sounded rehearsed, formal, like language borrowed from somewhere else. But I didn't question it, because fear was there too. Real fear. I could hear it in his voice dip at the end of sentences, in the way he rushed through explanations, as if someone might interrupt him. "Dad, I don't know who else to ask. I really need you." That was it. Protector mode, full activation. I told him everything a father is supposed to say in that moment, that he wasn't in trouble, that school problems can be fixed, that no matter what it was, we'd handle it together, that he didn't need to be scared. "I've got you. You hear me? I've got you." He exhaled. I could almost picture him sitting there, shoulders dropping just a little, relief mixed with something else I couldn't quite name. "There's some paperwork," he continued. "They said it needs to be signed. It's just forms. For school support, financial stuff. I don't really understand it." Financial. That word should have stopped me, but it didn't. Because when your child asks for help, you don't look for traps. You look for solutions. You don't interrogate, you reassure. "I'll take care of it," I said without hesitation. "Send me whatever you have. We'll go through it." He thanked me over and over, too many times now that I think about it, like someone afraid I might change my mind. Before hanging up, he added one more thing. "Dad, please don't tell anyone yet. The school said it could get complicated." I paused for half a second. "Okay," I said, "if that's what you need." The call ended, and I sat there staring at my phone. I told myself I was proud of him for asking for help, for not hiding his struggles, for trusting me. That's what good parents want, isn't it? To be the safe place. Still, something lingered, a faint discomfort I couldn't explain. The tone of his voice, the choice of words, the urgency wrapped in politeness. But I pushed it aside, because doubt feels like betrayal when it's aimed at your own child. I reminded myself that kids panic, that school pressure can twist anyone into knots, that fear can make people sound strange, and above all, I reminded myself of one simple truth. I believed every word he said, because why wouldn't I? He was my son. The documents arrived that same evening.
Not through the school portal, not with a teacher's name attached. Just a neat digital packet emailed to me, labeled Urgent Academic Support Forms. At first glance, everything looked official. Clean formatting, numbered sections, bold headers, the kind of paperwork adults recognize instantly, even if they don't fully understand it yet. I told myself that schools deal with complicated things all the time now. Grants, programs, emergency assistance, legal protections. It made sense, I thought, or at least I wanted it to. Still, something felt off. I opened the first page and started reading, not skimming, reading. The language was dense, precise, carefully constructed. Words like obligor, irrevocable, authorization, liability. Long sentences that wrapped around themselves and forced you to read them twice just to be sure you hadn't missed something. This didn't sound like school paperwork. This sounded like something else entirely. My phone buzzed. A message from my son. "Did you get the forms? They said it's really time-sensitive." There it was again. That pressure. Not panic, not confusion, pressure. "I'm looking at them now," I replied. "Can you explain what this section means?" There was a pause. Then, "I'm not really sure. They just told me it's standard. Everyone signs it." Everyone signs it. That sentence is dangerous. It's designed to shut down questions, to make doubt feel unnecessary, even rude. I scrolled further. One page turned into another, then another. There were signature lines, multiple ones, initial boxes, sections that referenced financial responsibility, consent to act on another's behalf, permission to make binding decisions. I stopped. Binding decisions? For academic support? I called him. "Hey," I said gently, "who gave you these forms?" "The school," he answered, quickly, too quickly. "They said if I don't get them back by tomorrow, I could lose my spot." "Your spot in what?" Another pause. "The program." "What program?" He exhaled sharply, like he'd been caught off guard. "I don't know, Dad. I just know it's important." That was the moment the unease stopped being background noise and stepped into the room with me. It wasn't what he didn't know, it was what he was repeating. The phrases sounded borrowed, like someone had handed him talking points and told him to stick to them. Deadlines, consequences, everyone signs it, just standard.
I didn't say any of that out loud. Instead, I softened my voice. "Okay," I said, "I'm not saying no. I just want to make sure I understand before I sign anything." Silence. Then, quietly, "They said if you don't sign, it could mess things up." "They?" "Yeah." "Who's they?" Another hesitation. Longer this time. I can't really explain it right now." That's when it hit me. School stress sounds messy, emotional, disorganized. Kids talk in circles when they're overwhelmed. They overshare. They ramble. This wasn't that. This was controlled. I told him I needed the night to read everything properly, that I'd get back to him in the morning. He didn't argue, but I could hear disappointment, maybe fear, or maybe something else entirely. After we hung up, I went back to the documents. This time, I read them as a father trying to protect his child, and as an adult who's signed enough contracts to know when something isn't what it claims to be. There were no school logos, no contact names, no phone numbers that led to an academic office. The email domain wasn't educational. It was generic. That should have been the first red flag. Then I noticed a clause buried halfway through the packet. One sentence almost invisible unless you were actively looking for it. By signing, the undersigned agrees to assume full responsibility. I leaned back in my chair. Assume responsibility for what? I realized something in that moment that made my stomach drop. This paperwork wasn't written for a student. It was written for an adult, for someone with assets, with authority, with something to lose. I hadn't even reached the last page yet. And that's when I realized this wasn't school paperwork at all. I didn't call a lawyer because I thought something was wrong. I called one because I wanted peace of mind. That's how I justified it to myself. A quick review,
A professional glance. Someone to tell me I was overthinking things so I could go back to being a helpful father and sign the papers without guilt or hesitation. I emailed the documents and scheduled a short call. 15 minutes, I told myself. That's all this would take. When the lawyer came on the line, his voice was calm, neutral, the kind of tone people use when nothing is alarming. "Okay," he said. "I've reviewed what you sent." I waited for the reassurance. It didn't come. Instead, there was silence. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind, the kind where you can almost hear someone rereading something in their head. "How did you receive these?" he finally asked. "My son sent them. He said they're related to school, financial aid, academic support." Another pause. "And who told him that?" the lawyer asked. "I assumed the school." "You assumed," he repeated. Not accusing, just clarifying. He began asking questions I hadn't prepared for. Where did the email originate? Who drafted the documents? Was there a cover letter? Any institutional contact? Any letterhead? I answered as honestly as I could. No. 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 That's when his tone shifted. "These aren't school forms," he said. I laughed softly, more out of nerves than humor. I figured they were just complicated. "They're not complicated, they're deliberate." He started explaining slowly, carefully, like he was dismantling something dangerous piece by piece. What I thought were academic forms were in reality binding contracts, liability transfers, authorizations that gave another party permission to act on my behalf, financial obligations that could follow me for years. One section alone, he explained, could make me legally responsible for debts I didn't create. Another could authorize asset movement without further consent. My mouth went dry. "This isn't assistance paperwork," he continued. "This is control." I stared at the pages on my screen, the same pages I had nearly signed without question, the same pages my son had urged me to sign quickly. "So, what happens if I sign this?" I asked. He didn't sugarcoat it. "You could lose money, property, legal standing, and once it's executed, reversing it would be extremely difficult." I felt a surge of anger, followed immediately by something worse. Fear. Not of the paperwork, but of what it meant. "My son wouldn't do this," I said automatically. "He wouldn't try to trick me." The lawyer didn't challenge that. Instead, he asked a question that landed much harder. "How old is your son?" When I told him, he nodded. "Then there's no scenario where he drafted this," he said, "or even fully understood it." That sentence cut through everything, because I knew it was true. My son is smart, capable, but this language, this structure, the strategic placement of clauses, this wasn't something learned in a classroom. This was written by someone who understood leverage, someone who understood consequences, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Has anyone else been involved?" the lawyer asked. A list of faces flashed through my mind, people in my life who knew my routines, my finances, my trust, people who had access, people who might benefit. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then don't sign anything," he said firmly, "and don't confront anyone yet." That surprised me. Why not? Because whoever prepared this believed they could rush you, pressure you, use emotion to close the deal. If you slow things down, they'll reveal themselves. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the situation settling in. What I thought was a simple act of support had become something else entirely. A test, a setup, a trap. And my son, my child, had been the delivery system. I felt sick. Before we ended the call, the lawyer said one last thing, quietly, carefully. "There's something you need to understand," he said. "Your son isn't the source of this. He's the cover." I swallowed. "What do you mean?" And that's when he said the words that made my chest tighten. Your son isn't the one doing this. Once the lawyer said it out loud, I couldn't unhear it. Your son isn't the one doing this. That sentence followed me everywhere, in the car, in the shower, lying awake at night staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I'd had with my son over the past few weeks. If he wasn't behind it, then who was? And why use him? I didn't confront my son, not yet. The lawyer was clear about that. If someone had coached him, pressured him, or scared him into this, the worst thing I could do was tip them off. So I started doing something I never imagined I'd have to do. I paid attention. I reread the emails he sent me. The wording was polite, formal, almost stiff, phrases he never used, sentences that sounded rehearsed, not emotional. Each message carried urgency, but not panic, pressure without explanation. That alone told me something was wrong. Then I checked the metadata on the documents. The lawyer had shown me how. Author information, edit history. The files weren't created on my son's laptop. They were created on an adult's machine. One name kept appearing in the background data, subtle, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. My stomach dropped when I recognized it. Someone I trusted. Someone who had access to my life, my finances, and my family. I won't say their name yet, but this was a person who'd been around my son regularly, someone he respected, someone who spoke confidently, convincingly, someone who knew exactly which buttons to push. The more I dug, the clearer it became. My son hadn't invented anything. He'd been coached. I found text messages on his tablet later that week, not explicit instructions, but guiding questions, suggestions disguised as concern. Did your dad sign yet? Make sure he understands it's urgent. Don't worry, this is for your future too. Future. That word showed up again and again, used like bait, like justification. I felt anger rise in my chest, but not toward my son, toward the person who put him in this position, the person who weaponized his innocence. I remembered moments that suddenly made sense, times my son had hesitated before calling me, times he sounded unsure, like he was reciting something instead of speaking freely, the way he'd ask, "Did you read everything?" instead of, "Do you understand?" That wasn't a child asking for help, that was a child checking instructions. The breaking point came when I finally asked him, gently, where the paperwork came from. He didn't answer right away. He looked down, fidgeted. His voice dropped when he finally spoke. "They said you wouldn't help if I told you," he whispered. That sentence shattered something in me. "Who said that?" I asked. He didn't want to say it. I could see the conflict on his face, fear, loyalty, confusion. That's when I knew. This wasn't just manipulation, it was intimidation. Whoever was behind this hadn't just convinced my son, it had scared him, made him believe lying to me was necessary, that honesty would ruin everything. I pulled him into a hug and told him the truth. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "None of this is on you." He cried into my shoulder like he hadn't in years. That was the moment my role became clear. I wasn't a confused parent anymore. I was a shield. The lawyer helped confirm everything. Emails traced back to the same adult, language patterns matched, financial motives surfaced, clear ones. If the paperwork had gone through, control would have shifted. Assets, authority, leverage, all hidden behind my son's voice. The realization made me sick. This wasn't about helping him with school. It wasn't about his future. It was about mine, about taking what I'd built without ever looking like the villain, using a child as camouflage. That night, as I watched my son sleep, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront the person behind this yet. I was going to let them think the plan was still working, because now I understood the truth. The plan wasn't to help my son succeed. It was to use him to destroy me. The hardest part wasn't anger. It was patience. Every instinct in my body wanted to confront the person who'd put my son in this position. I wanted answers, apologies, justice immediately. But the lawyer stopped me with a single sentence that changed everything. "If you confront them now," he said, "they'll erase the evidence." So I didn't confront anyone. I smiled. I nodded. I played my part. And quietly, behind the scenes, we started building something far stronger than outrage. A case. The lawyer and I met twice a week. Each meeting felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. He walked me through the process slowly, deliberately. What to save, what not to touch, how to communicate without revealing suspicion. "Let them talk," he said. "People reveal more when they think they're winning." So I let the emails continue. I responded politely. I asked clarifying questions. I acted confused, just enough to invite more explanation. Each reply brought more detail, more overconfidence, more proof. They thought they were guiding me. In reality, they were documenting themselves. Every document was saved, every message backed up, timestamps preserved, IP addresses logged. The lawyer explained how patterns mattered more than single messages, how intent is proven through repetition. Meanwhile, the most important thing happened quietly. My son was protected. The pressure stopped, not because the manipulator backed off, but because we cut off access. School pickups changed. Communication shifted to supervised channels. The lawyer arranged for a child advocate to speak with him, not to interrogate, but to reassure, to undo the fear. I watched my son slowly relax. His shoulders dropped. His laughter returned in small moments. He stopped asking if I was mad at him. That alone told me we were doing the right thing. The manipulator didn't notice the shift at first. They were too focused on the paperwork, on the timeline, on the illusion of progress. They asked questions like, "Did you get a chance to review?" They reminded me of deadlines. They emphasized urgency. Each push revealed motive: financial gain, control, long-term leverage. The lawyer explained it in plain terms. This wasn't about a single document, he said. This was about setting a precedent. Once you signed one thing, they'd come back for more. And my son would have been the messenger every time.
That thought hardened something in me. I followed the lawyer's instructions precisely. No emotional responses, no accusations, just steady cooperation on the surface. Behind the scenes, subpoenas were prepared, statements drafted, safeguards put in place. Every interaction was cataloged like evidence in a crime lab, because that's what it was, a crime disguised as concern. At one point, the manipulator grew bolder. They sent a message directly, bypassing my son entirely. Friendly, casual. "Just checking in," it read. "We're all doing this for his future, right?" I forwarded it to the lawyer without replying. He smiled grimly. "They're getting comfortable," he said. "That's when people make mistakes." And they did. Contradictions appeared, details that didn't line up, claims that conflicted with earlier messages. Each inconsistency weakened their story and strengthened ours. What shocked me most was how confident they were. They truly believed using a child made them untouchable. They thought no parent would slow down enough to investigate, that love would override logic, that fear would override caution. They were wrong. Because love doesn't make you blind, it makes you vigilant. By the time everything was in place, the lawyer leaned back in his chair and nodded. "We have enough," he said. "Not just enough to stop the scheme, enough to expose it, enough to protect my son permanently, enough to make sure this never happened again, to him or anyone else." I didn't feel triumph. I felt calm. The kind of calm that comes when you know the truth, and the truth is documented, secured, and ready. The people behind this thought they were clever. They thought they were invisible. They thought using a child erased their fingerprints. They were wrong. They thought they were using a child as cover. They didn't realize they left a trail.
The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They never do. They came quietly, methodically, the way truth usually does when it's backed by evidence instead of emotion. Legal notices were sent, access was revoked, boundaries were enforced, firmly, permanently. The adults involved were confronted not with anger, but with facts, documents, timelines, messages they forgot they'd written. And suddenly, the confidence disappeared. Excuses replaced certainty. Silence replaced pressure. I won't go into every detail of what happened next, not because it wasn't satisfying, but because it wasn't the point. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply removal of power, loss of access, a door that closes and doesn't reopen. What mattered most wasn't what happened to them. It was what happened to my son. The first real conversation we had after everything came out didn't involve blame or interrogation. We sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, the house quiet, the kind of quiet where truth feels safer. "I thought I was helping," he said, staring at his hands. "They said you'd be proud of me." That sentence hit harder than anything the lawyer had said, because that's how manipulation works. It doesn't look like force. It looks like approval, like guidance, like someone telling a child they're doing the right thing. I told him something he needed to hear, and something I needed to say. "You never have to earn my protection," I said. "You already have it." His shoulders relaxed. The tension I hadn't realized he was carrying began to fade. That was the moment I knew our relationship wasn't damaged. It was strengthened. We talked about fear, about how adults can sound convincing even when they're wrong, about how pressure doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with praise and urgency and the promise of being grown up.
And we talked about trust, not the kind that means believing everything blindly, but the kind that means coming to each other when something feels off. I told him I was proud of him, not for following instructions, but for asking for help, even when that help request was shaped by someone else's influence. As a parent, this experience changed me. I used to believe danger came from obvious places, strangers, bad intentions, clear threats. Now I know better. Innocence is powerful, and because of that, it's often exploited, not just by villains in movies, but by ordinary people who justify their actions as necessary or for the greater good. That's why the lessons matter. Never sign documents without fully understanding them, no matter who brings them to you. Children can be pressured without realizing it, especially by adults they trust. Protecting your child isn't just about physical safety, it's about emotional and legal safety too. And trust your instincts, but verify when the stakes are high. If something feels urgent without explanation, pause. If something feels rehearsed instead of honest, question it. And if your child sounds afraid in a way you don't recognize, listen closely. Because asking questions isn't a lack of trust, it's an act of love. Today, my son and I are closer than we were before, not because nothing happened, but because we faced it together, because he learned that he can come to me with anything, and I learned that being a parent means protecting your child not just from the world, but from the ways the world might try to use them. He thought he was asking for help with school. What he really did was teach me one of the hardest lessons of my life. My son thought he was asking for help with school, but what he really showed me was how easily innocence can be used as a weapon.